The story begins with our main character, a boy named Vanitas, who is essentially the son of a cold-blooded marquis from a certain novel, a villainous aristocrat who enslaves others, commits countless atrocities, and eventually meets a dark, lonely end. Yeah, not exactly the kind of legacy anyone would want, right? And then comes the twist. Vanitas reveals that he has reincarnated into this exact hated character, the one everyone abandoned. Like, seriously, of all people, why him? Standing in front of a mirror, he examines himself and realizes this is indeed Vanitas, noting how weak and frail his body feels, estimating his age to be around 15 and thinking that although he hasn't sorted everything out yet, his memories are slowly becoming clearer because when he first woke up, he didn't even know who he was. And then suddenly, his worried parents rush in, relieved that Vanitas is finally awake after being unconscious for nearly 3 days and nights, surrounded by butlers and maids while he sits on the bed reflecting on how nothing made sense at first. But as his memories return, he realizes he used to live in a completely different world filled with towering skyscrapers and crowded streets, where he once read a novel. He doesn't remember its title, but he clearly remembers Vanitas as the antagonist, someone who insults the heroes, makes them suffer, and ultimately gets defeated, loses everything including the heroines, becomes a slave, and dies alone. Yeah, that's definitely not a great ending to look forward to. So naturally, he starts wondering why he's here and who he even is now, but decides that no matter what, he will remain himself, because otherwise he might lose who he is entirely, and more importantly, he refuses to accept that fate. And from that moment on, he begins gathering information, reading books, and thinking constantly about the inevitable duel with the protagonist, realizing it's most likely unavoidable, which makes him wonder, is there any way to win this? That's when his attention shifts to magic, because in this world, magic exists. Magic that manipulates fire and water, alters appearances and objects, and allows the caster to create almost anything through imagination. And while the original Vanitas used a basic long-range spell called Light Arrow, he recalls something far more intriguing, a long-lost magic, nearly impossible to master, so difficult that it's been completely forgotten, except for him, the one who reincarnated, a magic only mentioned in myths. Domination magic, an ability that allows control over the magic flowing in space and manipulation of all matter at will. But just as he tries to sense it, the magic suddenly disappears, making him realize it will take time to properly learn it. Though maybe, just maybe, it can help him change his destiny. The next day, he wakes up after spending the entire night reading magic tomes, noting how impressive the Marquis house's collection is, and surprisingly how kind the people seem, until a maid enters, greets him, and informs him that his clothes and tea are ready, which he casually tells her to leave aside. But then he notices something odd. Her movements are stiff, and the reason becomes painfully obvious when he suddenly grabs her dress, causing her to panic, and he immediately apologizes, realizing that the original Vanitas used to grope the maids and treat them violently. Yeah, that explains the tension, doesn't it? He reflects on how his hand moved on its own, thinking that even though his personality has changed after reincarnation, old habits don't disappear easily, but he quickly decides he can't dwell on this because today is important, and after changing, he analyzes the two main reasons for Vanitas's downfall: losing to the protagonist, which can only be avoided by becoming stronger, and losing the enslaved heroines, which means even defeating the protagonist is meaningless if they escape. And then the three heroines are introduced. Christina, a noble lady whose dignity and beauty make her seem anything but a slave; Hildegard, a cheerful, battle-loving foreign knight; and Rapana, a beastkin with rare, lustrous black fur. Vanitas realizes that today is his first meeting with them, and his chance to build a good relationship, because they hold his fate, recalling faint memories of their smiling faces. And soon enough, the three slaves arrive and ask what his command is for the day. While he acknowledges their presence and internally admits that after everything they've suffered, there's no way they think well of him. But still, he can't leave things as they are, so he apologizes for calling them suddenly and explains that he just wanted to meet them, which surprises them. And then he calls Christina forward, remembering a scene from the novel where she complimented his looks, wondering if that detail matters as he approaches her, expresses that he's glad to meet her, and gets a bit too close, causing her to blush and push him away, while he immediately admits it was his fault for getting too close, and explains that he simply wanted to see her face up close, complimenting her soft skin and shining eyes, which leaves her flustered and calling his words strange and unfair. And honestly, yeah, that came out of nowhere. Vanitas realizes that since she likes his appearance, compliments from someone she dislikes create this reaction, then shifts his attention to Rapana, calling her over while remembering she suffered the most abuse due to her small and weak stature, even recalling scenes where she was physically harmed. And now, as he lifts her onto his lap, she panics while Christina anxiously questions his actions, making him wonder if they think he's about to hurt her. But instead, he gently pats her head and praises how soft her fur is, saying he could touch it all the time, leaving Rapana frozen while Christina nervously warns him not to be rough, to which he calmly responds that he still wants to touch her, and asks if that's not okay. And when Rapana can't even respond, he lightly smiles and assumes she's fine with it, before asking if he can touch her tail too, which immediately triggers Christina to pull her away and insist he stop, demanding to know what he actually wants, leaving Vanitas internally questioning if he just made things worse when he only intended something harmless. And yeah, this is going downhill fast. Now only Hildegard remains, silently observing everything, until she finally comments that he is strong but weak, and weak but strong, which makes him recall that she is the daughter of a warrior from the Lepite tribe, a group that respects strength and protects the weak. And while the old Vanitas was someone she needed to protect, now she looks at him as if he's someone entirely different, and suddenly she clenches her fist and proposes a fight to find out the truth, which makes Vanitas realize this is a plan that values strength. So he agrees to a mock battle, and as they both stand ready to fight, he thinks to himself that it's time to test domination magic, and see just how powerful it really is. Now the scene shifts to Vanitas and Hildegard standing face to face, ready for their mock battle as Vanitas calls her forward and signals that it's time to begin, all while thinking about who she really is, the daughter of a warrior from the Lepite tribe, and realizing that if this were a real fight, there's no way he would walk away unscathed. Yeah, that would be less of a battle and more of a public humiliation. But then again, this isn't a real fight, and that's exactly why he sees it as the perfect opportunity to test his powers, especially domination magic, the mysterious ability he's been trying to control. So he focuses and attempts to use it exactly the way he would in an actual battle. The moment Christina notices this, she immediately panics and warns him that it's too dangerous, insisting that if all he wants is a mock battle, they can do it the usual way. But Vanitas calmly explains that there would be no point in that, because this is his chance, not just to test himself, but to show all three of them just how much he has changed. Then, almost as if making a declaration to himself, he reminds everyone that though he was reborn into this body, his true name is Vanitas, before pointing toward Hildegard and telling her not to hold back, ordering her to come at him and even use magic if she wants. Hearing this, Hildegard acknowledges his command and agrees to fight seriously, and without hesitation, launches her first attack, a spell called Mud Shot. The second Christina and Rapana see it coming, both of them panic, while Vanitas quickly raises his hand and confidently activates his magic. Except, well, instead of blocking the attack, the giant mud ball flies straight into his face. Yeah, not exactly the dramatic display of power he was probably going for. The impact sends him crashing straight to the ground, leaving all three girls shocked, and Christina immediately rushes forward in alarm, asking if he's all right, and reminding him that she warned him because this was dangerous. For a moment, Vanitas lies there, completely stunned, probably questioning every life choice that led him to eating mud in front of his audience. But then he slowly gets back up and laughs, realizing that his magic clearly won't work if he focuses it all in one place. So, brushing himself off, he tells Hildegard to come at him again, just like before, while Christina remains visibly worried, prompting him to reassure her that he's completely fine. Internally, though, he's already analyzing the situation, reminding himself that he already knows Hildegard's magic is mud-based and that he knows exactly where the attack will come from, which means this time, things should be different. He signals for the battle to continue and Hildegard agrees before launching Mudshot once again, causing Christina and Rapana to tense up in panic. But this time, just as the attack is about to land, Vanitas instantly raises his hand and blocks it perfectly. Seeing this, he lets out a relieved breath, while Hildegard stands there in silent shock, clearly surprised by what she just witnessed. Christina quickly blurts out that his handsome face is still covered in mud, which, honestly, kind of ruins the cool moment. But Vanitas ignores it and, while catching his breath, asks Hildegard if she's enjoying this. She responds by observing that while he is still weak, he has undeniably become much stronger than before, and admits that this is actually fun. Hearing that, Vanitas takes another breath and tells her that this was only the beginning, declaring that now he'll show her what he can really do. Words that leave Hildegard staring at him in complete surprise, wondering, what exactly is he about to unleash? At that moment, Hildegard looks at Vanitas and asks if they are truly about to fight seriously now, and he confirms it without hesitation, telling her to come at him with everything she has, which instantly leaves Christina and Rapana stunned. Like, seriously, did he just ask for her full power? But Hildegard doesn't hold back. She begins gathering her magic and declares that this is her full strength, and in the next instant, she unleashes a massive attack. Mud Spiral Bomb, a huge, spiraling mass of mud rushing straight toward Vanitas, and just as it closes in, he activates Domination Magic, and within seconds the entire attack is completely destroyed. Not deflected, not weakened, obliterated. Seeing this, Christina and Rapana panic, unable to believe what just happened, because this shouldn't even be possible. How did he neutralize that magic so effortlessly? And before anyone can even process it, Vanitas suddenly dashes forward, grabs Hildegard by the wrist, and uses his magic again, instantly binding her in place, leaving her completely immobilized as she panics and realizes she can't move at all, questioning what this power even is. While Vanitas calmly explains that this is all the power he can currently gather, focusing the mana in the atmosphere through domination magic, and even if she tries her absolute best right now, she won't be able to move. But then he reassures her that there's no need to panic, because the binding will end soon. Except, right after saying that, he suddenly staggers, dizziness hitting him out of nowhere, and collapses straight to the ground. Christina immediately rushes toward him in panic, helping him up and asking if he's all right, while he insists that he's fine and apologizes, and at the same time, the binding on Hildegard disappears, freeing her instantly. She looks at him in amazement and admits that what he just did was incredible, saying that he has clearly changed and now feels like a completely different person, which prompts Christina to ask what reincarnated even means, and Vanitas responds simply, explaining that he is who he is now, and that their previous master, the one who caused them pain, is gone. Then he calls out Christina's name, and she looks at him in surprise before he calls Rapana and Hildegard as well, telling all three that there is still a lot they need to understand, but he wants them to walk with him from now on. And as the three girls sit there with him, Vanitas thinks to himself that he can finally trust them, and from this moment onward, he won't let anyone take the smiles off their faces ever again. The scene shifts as Vanitas tells his parents the truth, that he has reincarnated, and they are left stunned, while he calmly explains that the previous Vanitas is gone and he is now the one standing before them, asking for their support first, and internally he reflects on how, after what he showed during the mock battle and how he treated the three girls, even his parents eventually accepted that he has changed. At first they were confused, of course they were. Who wouldn't be? But after thinking it through and listening to him, they allowed him to live as Vanitas. A few days later, he sits in the dining room having lunch, when his father calls him over, sits beside him, and mentions that even the workers around the estate have started noticing how much he has changed, to which Vanitas quietly thinks it must be for the better, while his father explains that he used to use foul language and act violently, but now people say he doesn't even touch them improperly anymore, and speaks kindly instead. And Vanitas silently takes a sip of tea, thinking that he isn't trying to win anyone over, but he understands that the previous Vanitas treated people horribly. Then his father adds something unexpected, that deep down, the old Vanitas was actually kind-hearted, but everything changed after he lost Noise, revealing that the real reason he became a villain was because he lost his younger brother a long time ago. And that makes Vanitas pause. Wait, a younger brother? Why doesn't he remember that from the novel? Was this some hidden backstory he completely missed? Before he can dwell on it, his father changes the subject and tells him that he has arranged the magic instructor Vanitas requested, which surprises him, but it also reminds him of what happened during the mock battle. He was able to use domination magic, but only barely. And if he truly wants to defeat the protagonist and protect the heroines, he is still far too weak, meaning he needs a proper teacher, someone real, someone capable of helping him master that power. His father then tells him that the instructor has already arrived and asks if he wants to meet them, and Vanitas immediately agrees. So his father signals a maid to bring the guest in, and as Vanitas waits, he wonders what kind of person this instructor might be. If they've known his father since his student days, then they must be highly skilled, right? That sounds ideal. But then suddenly a boy walks in. Someone who looks exactly like Vanitas. Same face, same features. For a moment, he just stares, Like, seriously, what is going on here? Is he looking at himself? He questions who this person is, noticing that even their hair, eyes, and overall appearance match his perfectly, yet their presence feels softer, different somehow. And just as the confusion peaks, his father casually suggests they begin, and the boy agrees. Then, in an instant, transforms into a beautiful woman. Vanitas is left stunned, realizing she had been mimicking his appearance, and she confirms it, introducing herself as Ashley Strayfall and stating that she has been assigned as his instructor. His father then explains that, as just demonstrated, Ashley possesses an innate ability called transformation, and Vanitas recalls reading about such attributes in the library, though he never imagined it could replicate someone's appearance so convincingly. Yeah, that's definitely not normal. His father continues, describing her as Phantom Illusions Ashley, someone who used to be active in the Ministry of Magic, leading a unit specializing in intelligence and reconnaissance, someone who played a key role in shaping the peace the Empire now enjoys, which clearly embarrasses her, as she asks him not to introduce her like that, mentioning that it has been nearly 20 years since they last met, and his father agrees that it has indeed been a long time, prompting Vanitas to react in surprise at the realization that they have known each other for 2 decades, while his father confirms it casually, and as all of this sinks in, Vanitas quietly reflects on something else entirely, that the races in this world are not limited to humans, and Rapana is one of those different types known as beastkin. Now, Vanitas starts thinking, if it has really been almost 20 years, then this instructor Ashley must have a much longer lifespan than humans, belonging to a race that spends most of its life in youth. And that raises a question, doesn't it? So he calls out to her and directly asks if she is an elf, but she simply laughs and replies that it's a secret, adding that he should just understand that she is much older than his father, which only deepens the mystery. And Vanitas can't help but think that she truly is a woman shrouded in mystery, a practitioner of transformation magic who was active during the Imperial Uprising. Yeah, she's definitely interesting. Then Ashley tells him that she wants to see his magic as well, and he immediately understands, suggesting they head to the training grounds. While back in the room, the three girls watch him leave with her, with Christina quietly questioning if that really is their master. And honestly, can you blame her? Once they arrive, Ashley stands facing Vanitas and begins by apologizing for surprising him. While he admits that seeing someone identical to himself was definitely strange, and she explains that she has already heard about him from his father, that he used to be quite unruly, that even the Imperial Magic Academy struggled to handle him, and that he was quite infamous, which makes Vanitas reflect on the previous Vanitas's countless atrocities, even in distant regions like the Lindworm domain. Then Ashley gets straight to the point, asking if he wants to learn Domination Magic, a legendary spell that no one has ever mastered, and follows it up with a deeper question. What does he plan to do after acquiring it? Because there's a real chance people might come to hate him for it. That catches him off guard. Hate him? Why? And when he asks what she means, Ashley explains that her own transformation magic allows her to take on another person's identity and act exactly like them, which naturally makes people fear her and avoid her, since such magic could easily be used for crime. Yeah, when you put it like that, it's not exactly reassuring. Vanitas reflects on how he had read that transformation. Magic usually only makes minor changes like hair color or facial features, but Ashley's version goes far deeper, making it incredibly useful for intelligence gathering. Though the backlash from society must be harsh, and Ashley confirms that if he uses domination magic, he may face the same kind of treatment, asking him again if he still wants to learn it. Without hesitation, Vanitas says yes, he wants to understand this magic, and if she is going to be his instructor, then he hopes she will show him a much bigger world, which clearly surprises her. And he adds that he has realized something else too, that this magic isn't just cruel or dangerous, it can also be something interesting, maybe even a little fun. That makes Ashley pause, genuinely surprised, admitting that he is nothing like the person she had heard about, and Vanitas responds by asking if she is disappointed now that she has met him, insisting that if she heard about him from his father, then she should know he would never harm others for his own gain. Ashley shakes her head and explains that anyone who has experienced war can understand, and that his eyes are clear. She sees no cruelty in them, no desire to harm others, and when Vanitas half-jokingly suggests that it could all be an illusion, that maybe he is hiding selfish intentions behind a mask, she simply smiles and tells him not to pretend to be a devil when he clearly isn't, leaving him a bit speechless. Yeah, it turns out being misunderstood villain isn't as easy to fake as it sounds. After that, Ashley thanks him and admits that she's actually starting to enjoy this, bringing up his words about wanting to see a bigger world, and then suddenly casts a spell. Beast transformation, White Snow Tigress. And as she begins to transform, she declares that she will show him everything she has experienced. And Vanitas can only stare in shock as she changes right before his eyes before she tells him to come along and start by working his body a little. And in the next moment, she fully transforms into a massive snow tiger, casually suggesting they begin with something simple. And just like that, his magic training already feels way more intense than expected. Now, Vanitas feels a bit nervous and thinks to himself, so this is what a legendary mage's practical lesson looks like? And honestly, yeah, this escalated fast. He stands there in shock, realizing that Ashley's form has completely changed. More importantly, she hasn't just transformed her appearance, she has become an entirely different species, something with a completely different ecology. Then suddenly the massive snow tigress lets out a roar, and Vanitas instinctively steps back in fear, turning around only to notice something unbelievable. The ground behind him is freezing over just from that roar. Wait, did she just freeze everything? Before he can even process it, he sees that the entire area around his instructor has already turned to ice. And even though he's standing at a distance, he feels an overwhelming, suffocating pressure that he can't even ward off. And then, without warning, the tigress leaps again, charging straight at him with another roar. And Vanitas panics as a sharp impact hits his shoulder, making him realize that even though he predicted her movement, he couldn't properly dodge it. He quickly understands something else too. Her speed is on a completely different level, far beyond even Hildegard's. And just like that, Ashley suddenly reverts back to her original form, while Vanitas, still catching his breath, wonders what just happened. And she calmly states that, as expected, they should stop here, explaining that although she suggested this, it might be too early for practical lessons like this. But Vanitas pushes back, questioning why they should stop when they've barely even started, insisting that she continue because he wants power. That makes her pause. Power? And he explains that there are things precious to him now, things he must protect, and for that, gaining strength is necessary. Hearing this, Ashley looks genuinely surprised, and at that moment, Vanitas notices something else. The three girls are watching from a distance, hiding nervously, clearly worried about him. And yeah, that hits differently. Ashley observes that this seems to be something he won't back down from no matter what, but she also warns him not to neglect himself just because he feels desperate. Then she points out the girls, telling him to look. They're waiting for him. Vanitas realizes they're worried for his safety, and that thought alone gives him a sense of reassurance. So, this is why he's doing this. With renewed determination, he asks Ashley once again to continue, and this time she agrees. And just like that, their training resumes. The scene shifts, and now Vanitas is in the bath, soaking in warm water, thinking about how he never imagined his family would have such a massive bathing space, something that can even be partitioned for private use. And honestly, it would feel like a waste not to take advantage of it. As he relaxes, he reflects on the practical lesson, realizing just how tough it was, though he can already feel himself getting stronger. But at the same time, his body is still in pretty bad condition. Still, he convinces himself that this kind of recovery is fine once in a while. Healing his body like this in such a huge bath isn't so bad. But then suddenly voices echo from outside, calling out to come quickly, and his attention snaps toward the door as it suddenly opens, followed by more voices saying he's inside. And before he can react, the three girls rush in, seemingly excited about going to bathe. Christina immediately stops Hildegard, while Hildegard casually insists they should just go in, and Christina, clearly flustered, starts worrying about how thin the bathing clothes are, panicking at the thought of what might happen if their master sees them like this. Yeah, that's definitely an awkward situation waiting to happen. And right on cue, her eyes shift toward the bath, where Vanitas is already there. She freezes in shock, instantly covering herself in panic, while Vanitas, completely unfazed, casually remarks that the water is quite warm and asks if she wants to join him. Christina immediately panics at Vanitas' suggestion and questions whether bathing together isn't moving way too fast. But before the moment can even settle, Hildegard suddenly grabs her by the shoulders and excitedly suggests they should just swim, while Christina hurriedly clings onto her, apologizing and insisting that it would be dangerous if she doesn't keep an eye on Hildegard. And honestly, at this point, it feels like she's trying to manage chaos more than anything else. Meanwhile, Vanitas watches quietly, thinking about how massive this bath really is. understanding why Hildegard would want to swim in a place like this, and soon enough, the three girls move to a separate side and begin bathing on their own. But peace doesn't last long as Hildegard immediately starts splashing water at Christina and even encourages Rapana to join in, leaving Christina flustered, embarrassed, and completely overwhelmed. Yeah, this is turning into pure chaos. Just as Vanitas is observing all this, footsteps approach and a voice casually comments on how interesting the scene is, and of course, it's Ashley who walks in laughing, mentioning how it's been years since she's seen something like this, and Vanitas glances at her as she casually joins him, remarking that the three girls seem just like sisters, which he agrees with, while Hildegard adds that even though their backgrounds are completely different, they've all gone through similar circumstances, and Vanitas reflects that maybe there were times when they had no choice but to get along. Then, out of nowhere, Ashley leans closer and asks him which one of the three is number one for him, and that question catches him off guard. Number one? He's never even thought about ranking them, so he simply answers that all of them are equally important to him. And Ashley teasingly moves closer, asking if she can be included in that too, to which he casually agrees, causing her to blush slightly and tell him not to say such things so plainly, leaving him a bit confused. Like, wait, what just happened there? She then thanks him and admits that she also considers him important. And as the moment softens, Hildegard, after all the splashing, suddenly gets tired in the water, prompting Ashley to quickly rush over, noticing she might be overheating and offering to take care of her while asking Rapana to help. Meanwhile, Vanitas calls Christina over and politely asks if she would mind washing his back, making her pause and ask if this is an order, but he clarifies that it isn't. He's not forcing her to do anything, and she nods, understanding, before quietly stepping behind him and beginning to clean his back. After a brief silence, she asks if she can ask him something, and when he allows it, she brings up his efforts, questioning why he is pushing himself so much, especially during the dangerous practical lessons with Ashley, pointing out that one wrong move could have cost him his life. Vanitas realizes that this is what has been bothering her, even asking if that's why she agreed to bathe here, and she admits that it is, confessing that she doesn't understand what he truly wants. For a moment, he stays silent, then finally explains, "Magic exists in this world. Monsters exist. Bandits and murderers exist. And life can be lost in an instant. So he wants power, not for himself, but to protect the people who are precious to him." Hearing that, Christina is surprised. Precious? And Vanitas calmly tells her that yes, she is one of them, which makes her blush instantly, and he continues, saying that if he has to be specific, then she, Rapana, Hildegard, and even Ashley are all equally precious to him. He adds that to protect them, he is willing to pay any price, to push out every last ounce of his strength if needed, and that is why he is putting in so much effort, because he has to. But instead of feeling reassured, Christina grows uneasy, her expression clouded as past memories of the cruel Vanitas resurface, and without saying much more, she quietly excuses herself and steps away, leaving Vanitas sitting there in silence, realizing that her expression had been overshadowed by those lingering fears. The scene shifts to a table where Vanitas' father sits with several other lords, and one of them bluntly asks what exactly he wants today, pointing out that unlike him, the rest of them are quite busy, while his father quietly reflects that it has been a few weeks since Vanitas told him about his reincarnation, and that is why he called these nearby lords for a meeting, before calmly revealing that he has invited Ashley into his territory, instantly shocking everyone, as one of them reacts by asking if he means that phantom, while another nervously confirms that she's the transformation magic user. His father thinks about how nobles are supposed to protect their pride, and carefully measuring every word and action, and how someone like Ashley, who can transform into others, naturally earns very little trust or good impression among them. And, honestly, their reactions are exactly what he expected. One lord presses further, demanding to know his true intention behind calling them all here and bringing up such matters, even threatening to leave if this is only about that phantom illusion, while Vanitas' father internally notes how they are all looking down on him, reminding himself that the Lindworm family is the oldest and most prestigious among the 7 Marquayas, yet these very lordsmen who are technically beneath his status show blatant disrespect, completely ignoring the hierarchy, all because of his timid nature and Vanitas' terrible reputation. Yeah, power really does shift fast when respect disappears. He realizes that if things continue like this, their house will only keep losing influence, and some of these people probably want exactly that. Then one lord casually asks about his son, wondering if he has caused any trouble again, and his father reflects that in the past, he would have responded with endless apologies, trying to ease the mood of nobles who should actually be below him, but not today. When another lord impatiently asks if that's all he wanted to say, Vanitas's father finally speaks with irritation, clearly fed up with their pointless chatter, which surprises them because since when does he talk like this? He then firmly states that he knows they don't have a good impression of transformation magic, so he wants to make it clear in advance that no one is to lay a hand on his son's guest, and adds another warning that he is aware some of them have been eyeing his territory, and while he is letting it go this time, it must stop immediately. That instantly changes the atmosphere, and one lord asks what suddenly happened to him, pointing out how different he sounds today, which makes him think, different. If he has changed, then it must be because of someone else's influence. And that someone is Vanitas, whose true nature and personality are completely different from before. The scene briefly shifts to the past, where Vanitas had explained his reincarnation, and his father questioned whether he was saying this world exists within a story and that he is destined to die, then challenged him on how he plans to live with such a truth, to which Vanitas responded that he would simply live as he wants, which led his father to question whether he meant the evil deeds, the violence born from losing his younger brother, or the bad reputation he gained from it. But Vanitas clarified that, as someone reincarnated, he is not bound to follow that path, that he doesn't care about reputation or consequences, and that he will act as he chooses, even declaring that the slaves are his and will remain his, and that to fight against his destined death, he may take unexpected actions involving those around him. He even went as far as to say that if his father wanted to stop him, he could do so now, and if he feared releasing another monster into the world, then he should kill him right there, which left his father shaken, questioning how he could kill someone wearing his son's face, while Vanitas calmly replied that only they have that right, and that he himself was placed in this body by chance, perhaps even at the cost of the real Vanitas's life. When asked why he revealed all this instead of simply pretending to be their son, sparing them the pain, Vanitas gave no answer, sitting silently as his mother broke down in tears, and his father questioned why he would make them suffer like this, only to realize that the boy in front of him was genuinely giving them a choice. Back in the present, his father reflects on that sincerity, the silence, the honesty, and decides that he wants to see this new Vanitas's future, and with that resolve, he firmly calls out the lords for their rude remarks, making one of them immediately stand and apologize, shocking everyone as they begin to realize that Vanitas's father has truly changed. He then thinks that rumors about him must already be spreading, but the day the world truly learns about the being behind Vanitas Lindworm is still far away. The scene shifts again, showing Vanitas sitting alone, visibly troubled, until Ashley approaches and asks what's bothering him, and he admits that he just feels like he wants to enjoy the world a bit more, which prompts her to jokingly ask if her practical lessons aren't satisfying enough. But he clarifies that her training is meaningful. It's just that he realizes he has been focusing only on training and hasn't spent enough time with the girls. Ashley agrees, suggesting that he take breaks and maybe go out into the city with them. And just like that, the scene shifts to the marketplace, where Vanitas walks alongside the three girls, while Hildegard excitedly reacts to the abundance of food, only for Christina to quickly stop her from touching anything. As Vanitas quietly appreciates Ashley for this opportunity, noticing how refreshing the outside world feels, filled with things he's seeing for the first time, Christina then asks what he wants to do today, and he casually replies that they should start by finding something delicious to eat, instantly exciting Hildegard, before he suddenly extends his hand toward Christina, which completely surprises her, making her question why he's holding it out like that. And he casually explains that since they're walking through the city, it's natural to hold hands, especially with someone dear, which makes her flustered as she asks if he means the kind of hand-holding lovers do, and when he asks if she's against it, she hesitates, admitting she hasn't prepared herself for something like that. That makes him recall the earlier bath scene, realizing that he still hasn't closed the gap between them, so instead, they continue walking forward while he reflects on how interesting this world is and resolves that as Vanitas, he will do everything he can to change his doomed fate, no matter who opposes him, because he wants to keep seeing smiles on their faces in the future. He reminds himself that it will take time, and there's no need to rush. For now, they should simply enjoy the moment. But just as they walk together, a shadowy figure quietly creeps in the darkness behind them, watching Vanitas from afar. The scene shifts again, and this time things take a surprisingly bold turn, as Vanitas calmly expresses that he wants Christina to feed him. She hesitates, asking in a careful tone whether this is an order, and he casually clarifies that it's just a wish. Nothing forced, nothing imposed. So, a bit unsure but unable to refuse, she gently feeds him a spoonful, and as he tastes it, he admits it's delicious. And isn't it kind of ironic? The same girl who couldn't even hold his hand earlier is now feeding him in public. Yeah, that's definitely not normal, but also not unwelcome either. Meanwhile, Vanitas reflects that doing something like this openly in the public eye might actually help shift perceptions, especially here in the central city of the Lindworm territory, Hassamnia, where appearances matter more than anything. So, following Ashley's advice, the four of them had come out to explore the city, and right now they were enjoying an elegant breakfast in the business district. Then Hildegard, curious as ever, asks where they'll go next. And Vanitas, after a brief pause, decides they should visit a blacksmith. After all, wasn't there a shop where the original Vanitas had once ordered a sword? Of all places. Why there? Still, they head toward a slightly worn-down store called Alkhausen Arms Shop, and upon entering, they're greeted by a clerk named Marcus, who seems oddly surprised to see Vanitas, like he recognizes him but doesn't want to admit it. And when Vanitas casually asks for a dagger, Marcus scrambles to present one, clearly nervous. Then, without much thought, Vanitas hands over 10 gold coins, way more than necessary, and takes the dagger, leaving Marcus stunned. Like, seriously, who tips like that for a dagger? But Vanitas doesn't dwell on it, brushing it off as a whim, even as Christina questions whether it's even usable, suggesting maybe a proper expert should have chosen instead. He simply shrugs it off, saying it's enough, and they move on, until the atmosphere suddenly shifts as they enter a completely different district, darker, heavier. And then a woman named Shuka greets him, teasingly recalling how he once bought Christina from her, revealing a past that's honestly uncomfortable to think about. She casually asks if he's here to replace his current slaves, which earns an immediate denial from Vanitas, who firmly states he's not there for that. And then, correcting her, he insists she call him just Vanitas now, not young Master Vanitas. Shuka smirks, noting he's finally acting like an adult, but then asks what he really wants, and that's when things get serious. As Vanitas calls Christina forward, asks her to stand behind him, and raises his hand, not in aggression, but with intent, and calmly declares that he wants to change her slave contract. Not just modify it, but remove and replace it entirely. Christina freezes, her thoughts racing. Wait, what does that even mean? Is this freedom or something else entirely? And honestly, even she doesn't know what to expect next. Shuka brings up the idea of changing the slave contract and looks at Vanitas, questioning what the young master is even thinking, and honestly, yeah, what is he thinking here? Vanitas calmly calls Christina closer and tells her to come near, then starts explaining that slave collars come in different variations, each representing a different grade, almost like it's basic knowledge. But is it really? He points out that Rapana and Hildegard wear plain black collars, simple and standard, but Christina's is different, a deep crimson that stands out immediately, yeah. That's definitely not normal. And Shuka proudly adds that if graded, it would rank at the highest quality since she's the one who brought Christina. Then goes on to explain how surprising it is that a young girl from a fallen noble family would willingly sell herself just to support her household. Like, seriously, who chooses that path? She explains how Christina's beauty and status increase her value, yet despite that, finding a buyer was difficult, which feels odd, right? A high-quality slave that doesn't sell. Something clearly isn't adding up, and through all this, Christina stays completely silent while Vanitas continues, explaining that because of this, a condition was added that buyers had to fulfill first, and Shuka confirms buyers avoided her because the crimson collar is unusual, capable of accepting a different kind of contract, even one that can bind the master too. And now things get interesting. Vanitas explains to Christina that the collar allows her to refuse any commands of a sexual nature to avoid abuse, then makes it clear that this is exactly why they came here, to change the contract. But why? To find out the truth. Does she actually want to become his slave or not? He explains that both parties must consent, and the magic of slave merchants is required, otherwise nothing changes. The collar registers the master's blood and magic. That's the only way a contract works, no shortcuts. Then he asks what she will do, and everything goes quiet as Christina stands still, before nervously explaining that she understands why he has changed. He has endured abuse, violence, trained himself, become different. Better even, and although the servants still fear him, she believes that will change once they see his current self, but Vanitas says nothing, just listens, and then she admits she still doesn't trust him, and yeah, that lands hard. She talks about people who suffered because of his past orders, people she knows who are tormented physically and mentally, and suddenly she collapses, overwhelmed, remembering how he used to look down on her. Same voice, same face. How do you just forget that? She admits she wants to trust him, but cannot entrust everything she has to him. And Vanitas quietly asks if that is her answer. Silence follows, heavy, expected, because he already knew she didn't fully trust him, and that the image of the old him still lingers in her mind, and yet he still wants to modify the contract, admitting he may have changed. But he isn't a saint, and cannot claim his feelings are completely pure. Then looking directly at her, he admits he still wants all of her. Yeah, bold move, no doubt. He takes her hand seriously and says he wants to earn her trust, explaining that he chose this place because it's where they first met, where they became master and slave, and Christina remembers that moment, the beginning of everything. And Vanitas continues, saying their relationship has always been one-sided, one exploiting the other. That's how it has always been. But now he wants to start again from that same point, promising to become a master worthy of her, and that she will never leave his side. And Christina blushes, then shyly wonders if he means only her, or also Hildegard and Rapena, and without hesitation he admits he's greedy and won't let any of the three go. Well, at least he's honest about it. Christina accepts with a small smile, and then Vanitas notices her hands are warm. She softly suggests it might just be his rapidly beating heart playing tricks on him, and he playfully asks if she wants to confirm it, then suddenly pulls her into an embrace and asks if his heart is beating properly. And right at that moment, Shuka interrupts, clearly annoyed, questioning what they even came here to do because this looks more like flirting than business, and honestly, she's not wrong. She tells them to take their lover's argument somewhere else. Christina immediately panics and denies doing anything indecent, while Vanitas apologizes and admits he wanted to do this here, which only makes Shuka more frustrated as she mutters that maybe the rumors are true and he really has changed. Then she asks Christina what she will do, and whether she will accept her master's proposal, while Vanitas calmly adds that the contract will only change when she wants it to. And Christina is surprised, wondering if he truly doesn't mind, and he confirms it, saying until then she should simply watch him and decide if he's worthy, which makes her blush again. Then Vanitas tells Shuka he will rely on her to mediate the contract when the time comes, and she agrees but reminds them she expects payment, of course. Business is business. And just like that, she dismisses them. And as they leave, Vanitas says his work here is done, so they might as well go to the shopping district, walk around, then head home, and Hildegard immediately agrees excitedly, but then suggests playing first before going home, while Rapana quietly notices something ahead, a boy being beaten by thugs. Vanitas notices too and remarks that it's happening pretty close. One thug demands money from the boy to pass, threatening him and saying they're dangerous when angry, so he better pay, and the boy desperately calls for help. And right on cue, Vanitas steps forward, slightly amused, thinking how in most cases it's a girl in trouble. But here, a guy of all places, why like this? Still, he glares at the thugs, and Hildegard, surprised, wonders if Vanitas is actually stepping in to save someone from bad guys. One of the thugs looks at Vanitas and scoffs, questioning what this even is, a young master standing there surrounded by pretty girls, while another casually adds that as it looks, they're already quite occupied. But then suddenly one of them notices something. White hair, black eyes, expensive clothes, and starts wondering if this boy is actually some noble, maybe even a lord's child, and just like that, their tone shifts a little, because, yeah, that kind of detail matters, and Vanitas steps forward, declaring that threatening a citizen of Lindworm in his presence won't be something he lets slide easily, and that's enough to trigger them. One thug instantly pulls out a knife and orders the others to grab him before he makes a move. But the moment they rush in, Vanitas effortlessly dodges, then uses domination magic to blast one of them back, sending him flying, and the remaining thugs freeze in shock, wondering what just happened. Honestly, same question here, and Vanitas looks almost unimpressed, questioning if that's all they've got, which only makes another thug angrier as he pulls out his knife and demands to know how he hurt their ally, while Christina and Hildegard watch in shock, calling out to him, and Vanitas immediately draws his dagger and strikes, but it breaks instantly. Yeah, not exactly the heroic moment he planned. Christina blurts out in surprise that the dagger he bought just broke, and one thug mocks him, asking if he doesn't even know how to maintain a weapon, then confidently declares that dealing with spoiled people isn't his hobby, but he'll kill him anyway, activating his magic, a fire slasher attack. But Vanitas calmly compresses it with his own magic and follows up with domination magic. that locks all the thugs in place before slamming them to the ground, completely immobilized, and just like that. Fight over, Vanitas walks over to the boy and asks if he's injured. The boy quickly says he's fine, and Vanitas tells him to be more careful from now on, earning a grateful thank you while Christina nervously checks if he's okay, and he reassures her not to worry, then tells Hildegard to call the guards so these thugs can be taken away, which she agrees to, and as things settle, Christina notices his broken dagger and points it out, and Vanitas casually admits it broke earlier than expected. And just like that, the scene shifts to a large hall where two men sit waiting, one of them stating that he knew it was about time Vanitas arrived, introducing himself as the blacksmith Dilak, and the other as his son Marcus, thanking him for granting them an audience. And Vanitas calmly responds that he already has an idea why they're here but wants to hear the reason directly. So Dilak explains that it's about the dagger Marcus sold him, admitting that his son made it himself but it was poor quality, and offers to return the gold coins if Vanitas gives the dagger back. And Vanitas casually replies that if that's the case, it'll be quick to show him, asking Christina to hand it over before presenting the broken dagger, and explaining it snapped during a small fight, then adds that he had asked Marcus to recommend a suitable weapon. And this was what he got. And that's enough for Dilak to lose his temper, striking Marcus to the ground and calling him a fool, angrily stating that he did something no blacksmith should ever do, giving a customer a worthless item that should have been discarded. And then both father and son bow deeply, apologizing sincerely and begging for understanding, even offering Dilak's life in exchange, as he presses a knife to his own neck. Yeah, things escalate fast, but Marcus immediately stops him, saying it's his fault alone since he sold the defective item, and Vanitas calmly orders Christina to knock the knife away, which she does instantly, leaving Dilak confused, asking why, and Vanitas tells him he doesn't want him taking responsibility for this, just to stay quiet and watch, then walks toward Marcus and demands a proper explanation, and Marcus finally reveals that a year ago, Vanitas had ordered his father to create a sword filled with jewels. Something impractical, something against his father's beliefs as a blacksmith who always made practical weapons. And even though he was forced to do it, his skills and passion began to decline. He lost confidence in his craft and eventually even his spirit, falling into depression which his mother couldn't bear to see. So Marcus sold Vanitas a dagger that would break, thinking that if Vanitas used it in a fight, he might get hurt. And honestly, that's one risky plan. He then begs Vanitas to punish him instead and spare his father, and Christina nervously asks what he will do now, and Vanitas simply says they'll see, then asks Marcus if he even likes blacksmithing, to which Marcus answers that, of course he does. He grew up watching his father forge weapons in blazing heat, and Vanitas nods before suddenly telling Dilak to give up his shop, which shocks Marcus, who questions why his father is being dragged into this, but Vanitas says he's mistaken, and explains that this will be his punishment, then reveals he intends to have Dilak forge weapons for his father's knight order, since practical weapons are his specialty, and that from now on he will stay at the knight's headquarters and can even bring his wife along, offering him the position of exclusive blacksmith, which leaves Dilak stunned, realizing he can fully focus on blacksmithing again, almost like a dream. And as Vanitas prepares to leave, he tells him to leave the shop to his son since he no longer needs the workshop. But Dilak, still confused, asks what punishment Marcus will receive, and Vanitas explains that just like Marcus intentionally sold him a broken dagger, he knowingly accepted it, aware it would break someday, which leaves Marcus shocked, wondering why he would do that, and Vanitas reveals he wanted a skilled, exclusive blacksmith all along. It was all a setup, and then casually adds that this wasn't an official audience. So there will be no records, meaning he can ignore Marcus's earlier actions since they've both acted against each other. Fair enough, right? Marcus hesitates, asking if he truly won't be punished. But Vanitas corrects him, saying he will be punished. His punishment is to create a weapon that surpasses even his father's work, alone, without help, building his own workshop and forging a weapon that only Vanitas will use. And Marcus, overwhelmed, admits he still has a long way to go, having made many failed weapons, but believes that even failure in blacksmithing can be corrected through blacksmithing itself, and Vanitas simply tells him to become a great blacksmith, worthy of acknowledgement. That's his punishment, and Marcus asks if this means taking responsibility for his actions, and Vanitas confirms it, telling him to remember this every time he swings his hammer, that this happened because of him, because both of them acted against each other, and as they leave, Christina quietly questions if it's really okay not to punish Marcus harshly, and Vanitas responds that punishing him would have been a waste, especially when he just gained two skilled blacksmiths so easily. The scene shifts, and now Vanitas sits on his bed when Rapana nervously knocks on the door, asking to be excused for entering, and he responds by apologizing for calling her so late, then asks her to come sit closer, and she quietly obeys, sitting down without a word. But he notices the distance between them and casually points it out, then suddenly lies down and suggests they sleep together. And just like that, her whole body stiffens. Yeah, that escalated fast, and he notices her reaction, questioning why she's staring at him like that, explaining that he only called her because he wanted to sleep beside her, even asking what she thought he meant. Did she really think he was the kind of person who would lay hands on her? Then, turning away, he casually admits it was just a joke, says goodnight and turns off the light, while Rapana nervously responds and lies there in silence, but Vanitas keeps thinking, now that she's his, and the moment she slowly moves closer, her collar suddenly tightens, making him sit up as he asks if it hurts, then directly questions if she was trying to kill him, and yeah, there it is. Rapana stands there terrified, completely exposed, and he calmly tells her he forgives her, which only confuses her more as she struggles to breathe and asks why he didn't punish her. And he explains that he already knows what she was thinking, that he expected her to take this chance to hurt him when he invited her into his room, and then tells her if she understands what he's saying, he'll listen to her after all. The night is still long, and that makes her pause like, wait, he actually wants to hear her out? She finally snaps, recalling how he never stopped hurting her before, how even when she cried, begged, suffered, he never showed mercy, and he admits it, saying his past self never cared, never stopped, never reduced her pain no matter how much she begged, and hearing that, she realizes this version of him really is different. But can she believe it? No, she refuses, saying he's just deceiving Christina and Hildegard because she remembers everything, every painful moment. And in her mind, she recalls how the three of them, despite different backgrounds, were bound together through shared suffering under the same master, a bond formed through enduring unreasonable violence. And she admits she survived only because of those two beside her, remembering moments like Hildegard fighting back and Christina being strangely happy with him now, which confuses her even more, like, how are they accepting this so easily? She just can't. She convinces herself this whole reincarnation story is a lie and then admits that when she saw him sleeping, she thought even her weak hands would be enough to break his neck. So she tried, but something felt off. When he touched her before, it didn't hurt. Was it because he was gentle, or because she didn't hate it? And even with those thoughts, she still tried to strangle him, and Vanitas calmly asks if that's what she wanted to do, and her eyes fill with tears, and instead of anger, he tells her not to cry and pulls her close, placing her head on his lap, asking her to lie down, and she panics, telling him to stop, insisting she won't fall for him like Christina, but he gently strokes her head, and she flinches again, scared, while he calmly explains he's just patting her head, nothing more. Yet she retreats into a corner asking why she can't be free, and he tells her he understands what's been eating at her. She couldn't keep up with all the changes around her, right? And she immediately pushes back, saying of course she can't suddenly believe he's changed overnight. How could anyone? And he agrees, but points out that the people close to her believe it, and that's what bothers her, isn't it? And yeah, that hits, she panics, and he calmly asks if he struck a nerve, and she finally admits that Christina and Hildegard were her only companions, and now it feels like he's taken them away from her, her precious people, and he explains that he showed her his vulnerable side because he wanted her to open up, because she's been suppressing too much and she needs to be more selfish, which confuses her. Selfish? And he clarifies that she can throw all her emotions at him, her pain, anger, frustration, even happiness, everything she's been holding inside. And she hesitates, asking if he truly doesn't mind, and he replies that as her master, if he can't accept everything about his slave, then he isn't worthy, telling her she has value and asking her to show him everything, only him, and that finally breaks her. She starts crying, and he quietly notes that she's finally calming down, then suddenly says it's time for her punishment. And she freezes again, but instead of anything harsh, he tells her to hug him. Yeah, not exactly what she expected, and she hesitates before lightly placing her hand on him, asking if that's enough, and he tells her to do more since it's her fault. Then adds that she must make sure not to fall asleep before he does, but she deliberately pretends to fall asleep anyway. And he notices, commenting that he told her to be selfish but didn't expect her to pick it up this fast. Honestly, fair point. Then gently fixes her hair, says goodnight, wishing her sweet dreams, and the scene shifts again to the next day, where Christina calls out to her asking what happened last night since the master called her to his room, wondering how it felt. And Rapana instantly gets flustered, while Christina admits she hasn't experienced anything like that and wants to understand it through her. And after a pause, Rapana snaps, calling her hopeless and telling her to take responsibility for what she's saying. The scene shifts again, and now Shuka sits in front of Vanitas, admitting she never expected to be invited into a noble mansion like this. And Vanitas calmly thanks her for coming, even remarking that it suits her more than expected, then casually points out that as a slave trader she must have had plenty of experience before, questioning if something like this really makes her uneasy. And Shuka responds that it's not that. She just never imagined being invited here, explaining that his father never used to interfere in shady dealings like hers and that she chose this place to avoid trouble. But things changed when she had to introduce herself, recalling how his father announced that from now on, the Lindworm ducal family would start using slaves more effectively and reevaluate their relationship with people like her. And that alone makes Vanitas pause, realizing his father may have misunderstood his relationship with the girls. And he reflects that if he were his old self, he would have only felt pleasure from one-sided contracts. But now he understands he can build trust instead, thinking about how lately he has involved slaves in managing the territory and even the Night Order, and how they've earned his trust, becoming comrades. Yeah, not exactly the usual master-slave dynamic, right? He concludes that as long as they treat them properly, they can become a powerful force for development and protection. And Shuka adds that his father even told her to take care of his son, which surprised her, especially seeing him lower his head before a slave merchant. Something unthinkable before, even wondering who knocked some sense into him. And Vanitas quickly denies being the reason, saying the one making decisions for Lindworm is his father, not him. Though Shuka clearly doesn't believe that and hints he doesn't need to lie, but he shifts the topic, asking if she prepared what he requested, and she immediately smiles, pulling out a suitcase and proudly revealing two high-grade collars, identical deep crimson ones like Christina's. And honestly, that color again? Yeah, that's not a coincidence. Vanitas notes their quality, and Shuka confirms they're meant for the other two girls. And just like that, the scene shifts again as Christina stops him, asking him to wait, confused, questioning why those collars are for Hildegard and Rapana, and Vanitas confirms it, which makes her even more uneasy as she asks why she was called here if it was only about them, and he explains that he's also considering revising her fundamental contract, revealing that Shuka came specifically to change the contract conditions, the ones that allow them to refuse any commands of a sexual nature, and Christina nervously reminds him that he himself said he wanted her to be ready first, and he admits he planned to wait but decided things might not progress otherwise, and she pushes back, saying his promises feel too light and that she's not that easy of a woman. And then he gives her that innocent look, asking if she really doesn't want it no matter what. And yeah, that kind of expression should be illegal because she instantly blushes and struggles to refuse, asking him not to make that face because it makes it harder, and he teasingly points out she's still refusing, even though he desires her so much, while Rapana quietly thinks how easily Christina gets swayed. Honestly, fair observation. And then Vanitas turns to Hildegard and Rapana, saying they both heard everything and that he wants to change their collars too, clarifying that the collar's color won't define their relationship, but he has no intention of letting any of them go. And as proof, he offers them these collars, asking if they would temporarily free themselves from being slaves, only to become his slaves again. And yeah, that sounds contradictory, but somehow it makes sense to him. Hildegard immediately responds that she will become his slave again. And when he asks if she's sure, she confidently says that even though he has changed and become somewhat different, being with him is fun, and that together they can grow stronger, recalling their past, saying being a slave doesn't matter, a master is still a master, and she is still herself. And Vanitas agrees, saying he feels the same and wants her to stay with him, no matter where things lead, even if it's toward hell. Okay, that got intense real quick, and she happily agrees, saying they'll always be together, grow stronger, and even face death side by side, pledging her service to him once again. And then Vanitas turns to Rapana, asking what she will do, and she hesitates, clearly shaken, initially agreeing but then apologizing, admitting she doesn't yet have the resolve to become his slave again. And as he approaches, she flinches. But instead of anger, he gently pats her head, asking if she thought he'd be upset, reminding her that he's the one who told her to be selfish, and that if she isn't ready, he'll wait, saying he'd be happy if she chooses to return to him on her own, acknowledging that her words came from the heart, and that, yeah, that hits differently. She looks surprised. But then he adds one thing she must remember. He won't let her go, His feelings are real and he wants her, which makes her nervous again, and he continues, explaining that being freed only to return again may feel terrible, but it's necessary, that the deep crimson collar is the bridge connecting all three of them, the chain binding them together, proof of their connection, and that's why he won't let it remain something insignificant, saying he'll wait for her resolve, and she quietly agrees, and finally, he turns back to Christina, asking for her answer, and she just stands there looking at him, hesitant, caught in the moment. Vanitas calls Christina's name and asks for her answer, and she just stands there in silence for a moment, before questioning if he really has no intention of showing mercy, even after telling Rapana he would wait for her, and Vanitas admits it openly, saying, she's right, he is selfish, he does what he wants, he's self-centered, and because of that, he won't wait for her anymore, he doesn't want to wait, and then, without hesitation, he takes her hand and asks her to become his slave in the truest sense of the word, asking her to give him everything, and Christina, clearly shaken, still agrees, saying she wants to stay with him and walk beside him, and Shuka immediately steps in, deciding they should begin, suggesting Hildegard goes first and saving the main event for later, then asks Vanitas for a bit of his blood, and tells him to stand to her left, while also asking Hildegard to kneel slightly since he's shorter, and she obediently adjusts herself, and honestly, she's way too comfortable with this. Shuka then instructs Vanitas to mix his blood with his mana, and apply it to Hildegard's collar, and before proceeding, he asks if she's ready, and she confidently agrees. And with that, Shuka activates her magic, declaring the release of the binding contract between master and servant, and instantly Hildegard's old collar shatters. She calls out to him, almost instinctively, and Vanitas gently touches her face, initiating the new contract, and she wears the new crimson collar, immediately asking if it looks cute, and he confirms that it does, and just like that, it's done. Then he turns to Christina, asking if she's ready, and she hesitates, clearly nervous, and he softly suggests they hold hands, and she agrees. And as they call each other's names, she declares she is giving him everything, and the moment their hands connect, the contract is revised and she flinches slightly, feeling the change. And when he asks what's wrong, she brushes it off, admitting it just felt like she truly became his completely. And Vanitas acknowledges it, saying that now everything about her belongs to him, thanking her for accepting him and choosing to stay with him forever, and that clearly surprises her. But she responds sincerely, saying she wants to walk her entire life alongside him, even if she doesn't know what lies ahead, whether it's full of thorns or not. And yeah, that kind of commitment hits deep, and he nods, then suddenly shifts tone, telling all three of them to come to his room at night and wear the negligés he bought earlier, and Rapana immediately panics, asking if that includes her too, while Hildegard excitedly looks forward to going to his room, and Rapana nervously questions why she has to come when her collar hasn't even been changed yet, while Christina awkwardly notes that he's acting quite impatient, and Vanitas simply states he won't accept any complaints and that he's been looking forward to this. And later that night, all three arrive in their nightwear and he welcomes them in, asking them to come closer, but then tells Rapana she's only here to observe, so she should sit comfortably in the corner, and the night passes with Christina and Hildegard sharing intimate, affectionate moments with him while Rapana quietly watches. Yeah, that's got to be a lot to process. And by the next day, Vanitas asks all three if they will stay with him forever. Christina answers without hesitation that she will. Hildegard says the same with confidence, while Rapana, still unsure, says she will consider it. And as he looks at them, Vanitas reflects that even if the path ahead is filled with thorns, he believes they will never stop moving forward. As long as they stay together, as long as he has these three by his side, the ones he trusts.
Here I